Announce the page. Boker Tov. Good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to 2024. We are learning Chassidus about our mission upon this earth. You know, you can't get it all. There are three blessings which man desperately needs: time, health, and wealth. Time, health, and wealth. When I say time, I mean longevity, right? Sure. Longevity, good health, and money. These are what you need, right? Maslow's pyramid, right? You need basic stuff. So when you're young, in the first part of your life, the sunrise years of your life, you've got plenty of longevity. You're not worrying about your mortality. And your health, typically, most young people are just very, very robust. Pretty good. But when it comes to their wealth, they've got garnished with garnished, right? They completely are like, Mommy, can you buy me this? Mommy, can you buy me that? Right? Then comes the middle years of your life. And now, you're not worried about your longevity. One second. No, sorry. You're not worried about your health. You're not worried about your health, right? You're not worried about your wealth because now you've got some resources. Middle age, you're independent. 20s, 30s, 40s, you got wealth. But one thing you have garnished of is time. You got no time. You remember those years? You're looking at it. No time. Well, we didn't have 11 kids at home. Then comes the sunset years of your life, where you have plenty time. The last, the 70s, 80s, plenty time. The guy tells me, today I've got an appointment at 10:30, and I've got to make a phone call at 4 o'clock. That's it. That's all I have to do today, right? And maybe the guy won't take my phone call either. You know what I mean? That's it. So you got plenty time. This is plenty time. Wealth, you also have got plenty of wealth. You got your IRAs, you got your investments, you got your dividends, you got everything. But when it comes to health, now you're running from this appointment to that appointment to this doctor. Medical tourism, I call it, right? You're traveling around it. So 2 out of 3 you always have. Either you're missing your wealth, or you're missing your time, or you're missing your health, right? What does it mean, family? What says?
If you have health, wealth, and the time, and you don't have a family, you're in bad shape.
Yeah, look, I'm saying this obviously in the context of humor, but we can analyze it. True, but now we're going to take it seriously. Now we're going to look a little bit deeper. On page 367, I did post the original text in the actual description of this video for the YouTubers. Thank you very much, Winston, for sending it to me to be at my fingertips. And we're learning a mimer called Yetzei Lepaalo, which is a verse in Psalms 104. Man goes out to his work, to his labor, which should be done until evening, which seems like an utterly useless piece of information when you look at it at first glance. And it seems like King David, who said this, was telling us the utterly obvious, that man goes out to his work, to his labor, which should be done until evening. I mean, okay. Like, what is the profound wisdom over here? And it's Chassidus that illuminates our eyes and helps us understand that this is not talking about the cobbler and the blacksmith that have to finish their work before they go to sleep at night. But what it means is it's talking about a human being, a Jew, a soul who was dispatched to this world on a mission. You're here on assignment. You're not here on retirement. And when you put it into that context, suddenly the whole verse comes alive in full color and 3D, because you realize, 1 second, whoa, I am on assignment. That means I'm here on a job and I've got to finish my job. And by the way, if you don't finish your job in this lifetime, what happens is that you need to come back for round 2 and round 3 and round 4, what we call Sod HaGilgulim, the secret of the reincarnation, where your soul needs to return to this world to finish a job that you were assigned. Now, the Rebbe taught us a story in our video presentation on Friday. A story of it's a beautiful story of a businessman and his coach driver. Do you remember the story?
Sure.
The businessman and the coach driver. In brief, they would the coach. What do you call it? The taxi driver was Jewish, and he was driving the businessman, and they came Erev Shabbos to an inn. They parked for Shabbos, and before Shabbos, they both get ready for Shabbos, the coach driver and the businessman. As they come out of the bathhouse, out of the room, the mikvah, getting ready for Shabbos in their Shabbos finest, it's the businessman who notices that another carriage is stuck in the mud. Now, the businessman's experience with AAA is a little weak, right? He doesn't really know what he's doing. He doesn't know an axle from a wheel, right? A stick shift from a steering wheel. He doesn't know, right? So he tries to help. He tries to do the right thing to help get the other guy's wagon out of the mud. But it's a mitzvah to do that, But he's very unsuccessful. He gets extremely filthy dirty. He gets himself injured along the process, and he hobbles his way back to shul minutes before Shabbos. Filthy dirty. Meanwhile, the coach driver, who's got all the experience in AAA, he's the guy that sits in shul early. He manages to invite all the poor people to his table, and what happens is that the poor people leave unsatisfied because they don't really get much to eat from the earnings of the wagon driver. Meanwhile, the wealthy businessman has no guests. He's quite miserable on Shabbos because he's injured. Had it been the other way around, the coach driver would have successfully rescued the wagon. The poor people would have eaten at the ample table of the businessman, where life would have been good. And the Rebbe says in the story, which was told us by the Alter Rebbe, when these two souls made it up to heaven eventually, in heaven they said, you guys mixed up your jobs. You've got to come back to this earth so that the wagon driver can fulfill the mitzvah assigned to him, the mitzvah of Azev Tazev Imoy. It's a biblical commandment that if you're going down the street and you see, even if it's your enemy's donkey, which is buckling under its weight, you cannot ignore him. You have to assist him. It's a biblical commandment, right? If you see someone else broken down on the side of the road, you got to help them. So the coachman needed to come back to this earth to finish his mitzvah of assisting a fellow traveler in need. And the businessman needed to come back to this world to finish his mission, which was to fulfill the mitzvah of inviting guests according to his soul's assignment. It's an amazing story, a peek into another world, a peek behind the veil as we're exposed to this profound idea that our souls are here on a mission, and if you abscond, is that the right word, abscond? Or abdicate? Your mission, then you got to come back and do it again. It's not going to help. It's an amazing idea, which is what King David is telling us in Psalms 104, that we would never have noticed if not the Chassidus opened our eyes to help us realize that. And now the question becomes, okay, so if I have a mission, then what is that mission? Which is what we're going to discover in this mimer, in this discourse. And also, we're going to suddenly realize that the seemingly upsetting circumstances in which we live or were raised and nurtured weren't there because God hates us, but because that's our assignment. A soldier in Gaza knows that his assignment is to do whatever he has to do, right? So he doesn't complain, I have to deal with rockets, I've got to deal with missiles, I've got to deal with terrorists. Hello, that's your mission. He knows that's his mission. He's not complaining. He knows that he has a mission. Did you see there's a house in Gaza? There's a house in Gaza on Airbnb. They're offering at 50 shekel a night. You see the house is like bombed out, and it says open air views. It's reduced. It's reduced from 900 shekel a night to 550 shekel a night. But
Air conditioning.
Yeah, open air conditioning, right? So the soldier in Gaza is not complaining because he knows that's his mission. And we too wouldn't complain about our parents being too poor, being abusive, being not religious enough, being too controlling. This becomes extremely personal now. Very, very personal. Because we all have trauma. Mm-hmm. And maybe your parent was emotionally abusive. Maybe your person was sexually molested, verbally abused. And we can sit for years on the therapist's couch and cry about it. But 5 minutes of meditating on this mimer tells you, don't run away from your problems. This is your assignment. So instead of crying about your dysfunction, say, I'm not displaced. I am dispatched. And this is my mission. So then you can say, Hashem trusts me to be able to overcome this problem.
So if you're,
But just hold that thought a second.
Sorry.
I just want you to realize how painful that is. I just want you to realize how painful that is. Because I don't want to be apathetic.
Minimize it.
I don't want to minimize. I don't want to minimize the pain. I just didn't want to minimize the pain of how difficult it is. I just want you to realize a person born with an addiction. What's an addiction? What's an addiction? I'm born with an addiction. An addiction means that you had a traumatic experience. Okay, research is developing, but there's different research theories. But let's say, according to one theory, that you were exposed to a traumatic situation and that you're addicted to that trauma. PTSD, it's just an amazing thing that soldiers with PTSD, they come alive when they watch a movie about war trauma or when they talk about their war trauma. That's when they come alive. Otherwise, the time why is that? Because the endorphins that were released in war become trapped in their bodies, and they can only come back when that trauma is recurring. And that's why they can sometimes become violent, because that's when they feel alive again. So an addiction is extremely powerful. It's overpowering. And now you're going to tell someone, yeah, your addiction is your assignment. That is so difficult to say to someone. Because how are you supposed to overcome this? How are you supposed to overcome this? I mean, the stories are so painful. Please hold your thought, right? Don't lose what you were going to say. I'm just developing this idea. So a homosexual, right? So the Rebbe. And he says, Rebbe, why did God make me like this?
Why do you view that as an addiction?
I didn't say it was an addiction.
Oh, okay.
I'm using it. I'm jumping around. An example of a struggle.
Oh, okay.
So homosexual writes to the Rebbe and he says, Rebbe, why did God create me like this? The Rebbe's answer aligned with what we're learning. The Rebbe says we're all on a mission. And if your soul is facing such a difficult struggle, like homosexuality, which is prohibited, it's prohibited in the Torah. It's not sugarcoat this, right? It says a man shall not lie with another man in the way of a woman, right? It is what it is, right? It might not be PC, but that's what it says in the book, right? So, and I'm not condemning, I'm not judging anybody. We all know people who have children that are homosexual, who themselves are homosexual. What are we going to do? We're not judging them. But look at the compassionate response that the Rebbe says to this guy. First of all, the Rebbe was deeply empathetic of his problem, validated his struggle. And then the Rebbe said that God doesn't put us in a circumstance that we can't handle. And therefore, if you were put into such a difficult challenge, if you were given such an incredibly powerful challenge that every day of your life, you're feeling sexually unfulfilled and that you're desiring something which you cannot have, it means that your soul has tremendous power, or God believes in you to be able to overcome a darkness that most other people would not be able to overcome. Now, you've really got to read the letter in its original to be able to appreciate the sensitivity here. But I think of the homosexual. I empathize with him. I have to tell you. I'm like, okay. So his brain understands that he must be a very special soul. But his heart hurts like hell. What is he going to do? So I don't want to mitigate the suffering of the soul. I'm just saying that life is not a bed of roses. Life is a hell of a hard. And that's why I want to say to you that every single person that you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. And in some cases, it's a battle that they know nothing about. In many cases. And that's why they're struggling with unhappiness. It's so painful. It's so hard. And that's why this really needs to be meditated upon. I mean, any kind of addiction. You say to someone, to an addict, snap out of it. Come on. Shake a leg. Stop being depressed.
You got a good life. Come on.
Yeah, you got this. You got that. You'll be fine. Baba Mises. Nonsense. It's so hard. It's so incredibly difficult. But when you realize and you meditate on the fact that you're on assignment, And that God doesn't deal unfairly with his creations. And if he put you in that situation, it means he's given you the tools to overcome, at least intellectually, at least. You can find a little bit of comfort knowing that you have what it takes. And my heart goes out to all human beings that have to struggle with their struggles. Some of us have to struggle with much more struggles than others. Right? And that's why you're going to be kind to everyone. I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Chuck?
Well, you were talking about we each have a mission, and you gave the example of a child who was abused. So let's say the child is abused by a father.
Mhm.
Is that part of his mission to abuse his?
No. It's her mission to deal with the rape or molestation trauma, but he's going to be held accountable for his crimes. That's not his mission to abuse. Absolutely not. In other words, it was decreed upon the victim that they would endure this particular challenge. But who will be the executioner? Who will be the harbinger of the bad news? That God, many emissaries God Almighty has. So if this guy volunteered for the job, then he's going to be held accountable. Which is why when it came to the Jews in Egypt, God had preordained that they were going to suffer in Egypt. But who was going to be the nation that abused them? It didn't have to be Egypt; it could have been another nation. The fact that the Egyptians jumped to volunteer means that they were held accountable. Okay.
Rabbi, if you were advising a homosexual according to Jewish law, you tell them to do the best you can to cope on it and not act on it, or would you tell them to become a transgender?
Whoa.
I'm just going to repeat the question. So the question is asked to me: if I was counseling a homosexual, would I tell them to curb their impulses, or would I tell them to become a transgender?
Not act on it. Let's say not act on
What does a transgender mean?
it. That
They changed their
Gender,
mind.
change
It's
your
in their
sex.
mind. Transgender in their mind.
Are they really changing their sex?
physically they could be.
Oh, they could.
I don't. I'm sorry. I don't think that that's a thing. I apologize, but I don't think that. I don't think that. In other words, transgender today means, from what I understand, and I don't want to get into a conversation that I'm not entirely. I don't know enough about it, but just somebody will start taking certain hormones and then say, okay, now I'm female, or now I'm male,
So you-
or they'll say identify. I identify as this way. I identify as that way. I'm not sure if that changes your sexual orientation. Again, I don't get into it.
Well,
what you're saying is-
physically, and what you're talking is
mentally.
Okay, so mentally, I don't think you're really changing much. But what does physically mean? Can a woman become a man? How does a woman become a man?
Absolutely.
Look, that's beyond my pale. I don't know.
So you would counsel them saying, don't act upon it. Do the best you can, but don't act upon it.
Look, it's very difficult for me to give a directive. It's very, very difficult for me to give a directive on something which I you know what I would do, Steve? I would cry with them. Seriously, that's what I would do.
What you're saying is you'd be sympathetic with.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
And explain to them that there's nothing really wrong with them. That this is your mission. This is how God made you,
your challenge.
right? Am I saying?
Yeah.
What's your
Which
challenge?
I think is part of the brilliance of Chassidus. The notion that you're broken, everyone's broken, and you got to deal with it, because so much of other religions are just totally judgmental. We went to a Catholic priest, and I'm not beating up the Catholics, and you said it to them, they'd say, now they're changing. This Pope's changing, okay, because he's understanding what the crowd's like, what it's like. But they say to him, that's a sin, mortal sin, can't do it.
You're gonna burn in hell.
You're gonna burn in hell.
Unless you say these words. You say these words,
Right.
then you're not going to burn in hell.
Say it 5 times.
Right, right.
It's hard to say. Look,
No, right.
God put me here to suffer. It is not.
Okay, so now, friends. Okay, now we're Keith. You just hit the raw nerve now. Okay, so Tanya in chapter 15 and in chapter 27 brings up the same question twice. Could it be that God put us in this world to suffer with a challenge that I'm not able to overcome? Could it be that God put me in this world with an evil inclination that's so powerful that I can never entirely neutralize it? And that I'm subjected to a lifetime of frustration. I mean, that runs contrary to every pop song coming out of Hollywood, right? Right? To every happily ever after story, right? Here, the Tanya introduces us to a line from the Zohar. The Zohar, the founding text of the Kabbalah. It says like this. It's just an unbelievable line. It's just unbelievable. Ay, ay, ay. Kadiskafia sitra achro istale kikora likud shabrichu b'chol almin b'shave. The Zohar says, Kadiskafia sitra achro. When the evil side, the other side, when the dark side, well said, Jen, when the dark side is curbed, there's got to be a better word for curbed. When the dark side is restrained. When the dark side is restrained, the restraining of the dark side of the evil impulse releases a blinding infinite light which would never otherwise have been revealed. What that means is that every time that you do a regular mitzvah, you're releasing a finite light. You're revealing godliness on a finite level in this world. Sorry, right? But when you transform dark into light, when you take something that is so incredibly luscious and desirable and such a pleasure, and you mitigate, you curb that, and you don't do it, each and every single time that you don't do what you wanted to, you're transforming dark into light. You're releasing this infinite light. Now this is enigmatic, but what is this? It's effectively saying. Sorry, what the Alter Rebbe is effectively saying is that life is not about the destination. It's not about, okay, I reached the finish line, now I can enjoy the rest of my life with 72 virgins, right? That's not what life is about. It's about each and every individual struggle. It's about hand-to-hand combat. It's a journey. It's a journey. So we're living in this dark world, spiritually dark world, where godliness is 100% hidden. And every single time that you desire to say Lashon Hara, libelous slander, every single time, no matter what the sin is, right? Every single time that you desire a married woman, every single time that you're entertaining a thought that you shouldn't be thinking about, and you force yourself not to think about it. Because remember, thought, speech, action, right? So whether you're curbing your evil speech, curbing your evil thought, or curbing your forbidden action, each and every single time you do that, you are transforming the darkness of this world into infinite light. And yes, the Tanya says God wants you to struggle forever until the day you die.
But that doesn't really help someone take the example of homosexuality.
Why not? Why does it not answer that question?
Because someone who has that predilection, who's that way, it's almost impossible for them to change. That's how God made them.
Okay, so you say, Harvey, that God made the homosexual the way he is, and it's impossible for them to change that. Okay, let's talk about a kleptomaniac.
I think kleptomaniac. I think with enough psychiatric help, kleptomaniac.
That's easy.
How about a person? Have you ever heard of a person that desires a forbidden a married woman? Ever heard of such a thing?
Never.
What about him? Is that congenital?
I don't think so. It goes back
I think it's congenital.
I think it goes back to the Bible.
It could be.
So are you going to say, well, if God created him that way that he desires a married woman, then he should do it?
No,
That's why God created
divorce.
Well, you're not allowed them either, right? Let me.
I think again, I'm not a psychiatrist. There's certain impulses that people can control with enough, maybe psychiatric help, with whatever.
Are you saying that?
Other impulses, for example, we talked about homosexuality.
I don't think that's.
I'm not a maven on that, but I would think someone who's either woman or man or gay, I don't believe they can really control that impulse.
Okay, so fine. So now we're touching on what's the point? The point is, the question is, can a homosexual, right, curb their desire, right? That's the question, right? I just want to say this, okay, that the reason why therapy is so huge today is because it's not only homosexuals that are struggling with, with their challenges. There are so many. There's a manual of neurodivergent conditions called the DSM, right? I don't know what it stands for anymore. I forget, but it's got a long term. It's the manual of all sorts of diseases, neurodivergent issues, right? I mean, whether it's OCD or ADHD or,
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, even something as basic as the codependent, okay? Even something as basic as the codependent. There's a person that's addicted to other people's validation, right? He's a people pleaser because he struggles with a weak sense of self-esteem,
But when
a sense of inadequacy, right? And that could be caused by any kind of trauma, different kinds of trauma. The question is, this person can't say no, or can't have a healthy marriage, right? Because they're constantly bickering with their spouses, who at the slightest trigger of perceived invalidation, right? So can that be handled, or are you going to say no? Just let him be.
No, that can be handled.
But if
You think that could be handled?
But
I
if you say
I think it can.
if you say a homosexual can't control their inclination, that implies that their inclination is a bad inclination. I mean, that it's evil to be homosexual. Therefore, they should try and
One
they
second.
should try and
One second.
control
In which
their
context?
inclination.
In which context would homosexuality be evil?
Legally.
So is that the context you're talking?
Yeah,
any context?
No. Any context is very different. In American context, there's nothing evil about homosexuality. Am I correct?
I'm sorry. Say it.
In the context of American law, there's nothing evil about homosexuality. Today, there's nothing evil. But we're talking biblically. We're talking biblically right now. From a biblical perspective, it's prohibited. So there's nothing to do about that. We can't edit the Bible, right? We're being intellectually honest with ourselves right now, right? So from a exactly, there's no amendments. From the biblical perspective, you're not allowed to do that action.
Take Modi. Modi brings such joy to people.
And he's homosexual.
And
he
he
quotes-
talks about it.
I came across
And he
a
talks
term.
about it.
I came across the term, in these Israeli army videos. A very interesting term I came across yesterday. In Israel, they do acronyms for everything. Everything is an acronym. Like, in America, you'll say the weekend. But in Israel, you'll say motzash. Motzash means motzai Shabbat. Motzai Shabbat, which is like motzash. It's the end of Shabbat, right? That's the Saturday night, right? So there's something called datlash. Datlash stands for dati lo shomer, which means religious but not observant. So you're like from like you keep Shabbat. Well, you believe in Shabbos, but you just don't do it. You believe in tefillin. In other words, it's not like many American Jews that say, "Well, since I don't lay tefillin, therefore I'm a Reformed Jew." No, I'm just a non-observant Orthodox. The non-observant Orthodox. It's okay. You know what I mean? You don't have to move the goalposts just because you don't observe. Say, listen, those are the goalposts. The goalposts are still the goalposts. I'm not there yet. Okay, fine. Anyways, let me just pull this in together, guys, because I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that I'm being extremely sensitive to the intense struggles of all human beings. Some of us know what our struggles are, and some of us don't know yet what our struggles are, but you'll find out eventually, sooner or later. These struggles are real. This life is not an easy place to handle. It's not an easy place to handle. Well, Rabbi, if God didn't want me to steal from the cash register, then why would God have left the cash register open? If God didn't want me to sin with that woman, then why do I have such an intense desire for her? Rabbi, if God wanted me to walk to shul on Shabbos, then he would have given me wings. I've heard all of the above. The answer is that, Moses, how old he was when he climbed Mount Sinai? The man was 80 years old. Okay? Now, let me ask you this question. If God Almighty is coming from heaven down to earth, okay? You're coming all the way from heaven, wherever that is, to earth. You couldn't go another mile or two to come down to the ground. You had to make this 80-year-old nebuch schlep up the mountain.
Up and down.
Seriously, what? God ran out of gas? Like, what happened? Oops, that's it. We got stuck on top of the mountain. Moses is going to have to meet me over here. Why does Moses have to climb the mountain? Why? Why couldn't you come down, meet us over here? We'd be okay. Right? The message here is that there's one thing that God cannot do if he's almighty. There's one thing alone. This is a very controversial statement and probably factually incorrect, but for the use of dramatic purpose, I'm gonna use it anyways. There's one thing that God cannot do if he's almighty, and what is that? Sweat.
The schwitz.
What makes you sweat?
Exertion.
When something's hard. But if you're almighty, nothing's hard. It's all easy. God wanted us to sweat. That's what gives him nachas. That's what that quote from the Zohar is effectively saying. What the answer of Tanya is that there's one thing that God really, really wants from us, and he wants us to sweat, to schwitz. Because when we work hard, we're doing something that God doesn't really do. And he likes that. He wants us to sweat. So he gives us tests that are so incredibly difficult. Now you've got a choice. Either you can say, I give up, and I'm not even trying, or you can live a life of divine intimacy with the knowledge that each and every single time that you overcome your temptation, you're experiencing a divine intimacy moment. It's okay to fail once in a while, I think. I'm sorry to sound so irreverent. I think it's okay if you fail once in a while.
Because you're human.
Because you're human. I think it's okay, That's why we have teshuvah.
Right.
And that's why we have Yom Kippur pre-scheduled. I can tell you when Yom Kippur is going to be in the year 2037. Right? Why? Why are we rescheduling Yom Kippur in 2037? Shouldn't be all forgiven, be this Yom Kippur and done? No, because we're human and we're expecting to fail. The question is not if you're going to fall. It's when you fall, what are you going to do about it? That's right. Because that's part of being human. And that's why, Fran, I'm starting to look at the comments right now. I don't understand why we'd be constantly tested. I hope I'm answering that question. Because that's the one thing that God wants from us. He wants us to sweat. I know it's not easy.
To sweat and then to overcome.
Yeah. Well, if you're not going to overcome, then you're not sweating. then you're just indulging. It's only when you realize and accept the fact that you're on a mission that you can say, well, this mission is not easy. It's not like you've not been given a little Mickey Mouse mission over here. You've been given, Gaza. That's not an easy mission. There's another guy came to the Rebbe. So, as a guy, he was dating a non-Jewish woman, and he was deeply in love with her. He wanted to marry her. So his family, it's a true story. His family tries to convince him every which way that he can. You shouldn't marry her. Children won't be Jewish. You're going to be betraying your parents, your grandparents, all sorts of real, passionate, well-intentioned reasons. And he was like, look, I hear what you're saying, but I still love her. What should I do? What should I do? At one point, I'm just telling a true story. This is what happened. At one point, somebody told him you should go talk to the Rebbe. So he goes to the Rebbe. Thank you. He goes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would give out dollars. So the Rebbe would speak to the Rebbe ran out of time basically in the 80s. There were so many Chassidim that the Rebbe didn't have time to have private audiences with people. So the Rebbe was spending, instead of 3 to 5 minutes with each Chassid, he was spending like 3 to 5 seconds with each Chassid as he gave out $1 and a quick exchange of ideas. So this guy came past the Rebbe. He whispered to the Rebbe as he receives his $1. He says, Rebbe, I'm dating a non-Jew and I want to marry her. So the Rebbe says to him, I envy you. He said, Rebbe, I'm sorry, you didn't hear what I said. You obviously didn't hear what I said. I said, I'm dating a non-Jew and I'm planning on marrying her. I said, I envy you, said the Rebbe. What? Like what? And the Rebbe explained. God doesn't put us in a situation that we can't handle. Our souls are here on a mission. And if the mission that you were put in is a mission, which is so incredibly difficult, overcoming the love, which is forbidden love, then it means that your soul has been endowed with so much power that I'm jealous of you.
So he's telling him, "Don't do it."
He was empowering
Nicer
him
way of doing it.
Empowering him,
with
that's
3
right.
words.
Right.
The guy was stunned.
Right.
It wasn't guilt. It wasn't sin. It wasn't evil. He wasn't being told how low he's going to fall.
Mm.
He was told how high he's
He is.
going. He already is.
He is.
And when he, think of your grandfather. When you came home and you did something wrong and somebody gave you a patch and pun him, right? That's one way to deal with it. But when your Geseder looked at you and he said, Yassale, es passt nicht for dir. It's not appropriate for you. You're so much better than that. Which way is gonna have more of an effect, right? The patch and pun him or the you're so much better than that kind of behavior. You don't hang out with those kids, right? Like, oh really? You think that highly of me? That's what the Rabbi was doing to this guy. He was showing him how high, how powerful, how much strength he has. And the story goes that apparently he managed to break it off and he married his Bashat.
We keep talking about mission.
Yeah.
So she
So
didn't convert.
how,
She didn't convert, bottom
I
line.
mean, I don't think I know what my mission is. I don't know what.
Yet, they were spending so much time for bringing
your
here.
mission is, but I'm
I don't know
I'm going chapter by chapter, but I haven't seen anything yet.
We haven't even started.
Other than I have a mission to understand what my mission is.
I'm with you.
I mean, do you know what your mission is?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you
You
what your
do?
mission is. I'm going to give you a spoiler
I know
alert.
What it was is where I would spell it.
What is that?
The hardest thing you have in
You
your
wanna share?
life is your mission.
Yeah, I'm going to share. Fine. I want to just give you a spoiler alert. Spoiler
I mean,
alert.
we're gonna get at
Yeah,
some point.
I'll tell you right now what it is.
Oh, okay.
Your
Start
soul-
writing, right, start writing.
Now, your soul was sent down to this earth by God in order to fulfill 613 tasks.
Oh,
613.
Well, then everybody has the same mission.
No.
Okay.
We have the same general mission, but when it comes to our specific emphasis,
Yes.
that's where we differ, and we'll talk about that more in
I
detail.
hope so.
But to say that my mission is to critique Netflix movies, that's not a mission. It's not a mission. My mission is to memorize every baseball player's name since 1826. That's not your divine mission.
So my mission is not to help sick children. That's not a.
That could be very well be your mission.
Yeah, that's good.
That could be your mission.
Oh.
There's a difference between utterly useless pieces of information, like analyzing the evolution of Leonardo DiCaprio's smile over 87 movies, right?
So a mission can't be self-serving.
It's got to
It
be
can't be
purpose
from
oriented.
this
It's got to be
animal soul.
purpose oriented. Yeah, yeah.
It has to have some
Yeah.
righteousness or good
Purpose oriented.
purpose.
Purpose oriented, as opposed to utterly benign and useless piece of information. Let's see the comments coming in. Rabbi, I want to give you a shout out. I noticed my main rabbi I learned with is in the beginning of your book, and I told him how absolutely profound your book is and should be taught to his young students. Awesome. I'd love to hear about that. Who is your main rabbi? And I appreciate that very much. Oh, Fran says the DSM is like diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders. Yes. And I was using the DSM as a validation of the struggles that people face. I am not in any way mitigating or making light of the challenges that people face. We all are going through. I think God is really amazing in the challenges that he makes for us. And God must really, really, really believe that we're great, considering the intensity of the challenges that he gives us. Gibbs says, practicing nullity helps a person see the body from a different angle, where the problems of the body can be depersonalized so as to be considered with impartiality, so as to see the super purpose. Okay, Gib, you're a little esoteric of that. I'm not going to go that route right now. Daniel, I have extreme PTSD. Ooh, from Iraq. Ooh, Daniel, you're a veteran. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Last month, 11 of our drivers walked past another driver sleeping. The secretary, now you're a truck driver, okay. The secretary asked me to check on him and to wake him up. I got in the cab and discovered he was dead. Ooh. This is last month? 11 of our, oh my God. So that must have been, ooh, I'm so sorry to hear that. So he's a warrior, is a veteran from Iraq. That PTSD. I think I spoke about PTSD, right? Right. I was so upset at Hashem that he let 11 other drivers walk past this man and wanted me to discover him dead in the cab. Exactly, I discovered my friends in Iraq dead. I was so mad, but a month later, I was able to give me closure to the friends I wasn't able to say goodbye to in Iraq. Ooh, that terrible event led me to do a closure of my PTSD. That's quite amazing, Daniel. That's really quite amazing that I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, but to take a negative experience like finding your fellow driver dead, to turn that into a positive as a closure to the soldiers that you couldn't say goodbye to. That's a beautiful Chassidus approach, eh? God bless you, man. Anyways, I'm sorry we didn't get into the discourse today, but I think it's good that we're spending a lot of Fabring in here.
This was good.
All right, guys. Have a great day, guys.
Yeah, one of my favorite all-time movies.